Hello to all of you out there in this great big world of social media. This is your brother Dana coming to you from the city of Chicago. As I do in each video, I want to say a special shout out there to the precious chosen people of the Most High Yah. What an honor and a privilege it is to have served you over these past 26 years. And that is what this video is about. This Friday night, I will celebrate 26 years of serving the Most High Yah's people, even before I knew they were His chosen people, in the inner cities of Chicago. I started, it will be this Friday night, up in Rogers Park as a youth pastor, where I was asked to come into this church, where I then turned an old fellowship hall into a makeshift gym, where I began to invite young people and young men from the neighborhood off the streets to come and play basketball. And I wanted just to show you here a picture of a couple of these young men that I'm still in relationship with. And this here is Mr. Bill Jr. Nyanu, and this is him today. He has an incredible story of how he has overcome so many issues and obstacles that have tried to destroy him and his family's life. And then up here I have Brother Jarrell, who is now married, and every time I see updates about him on Facebook, he's got a picture of another place that he has taken his children. And I see the love that he has for his family, and such an incredible family man and father he has become. And so the videos that I'm going to be doing here are just going to share some of the stories of my journey over these past 26 years, so that you who have been following me now for maybe up to 4 years will get to know me a little bit deeper and come to a maybe better understanding of how I have become who I am today, and how the Most High Yah, praise all to Him, has opened my eyes to just all of the injustices that has been placed upon you, who I now know are His precious chosen people. And so I'm going to take you on this little journey, and as you saw those young men, how I thought I could increase the amount of young men coming in and utilizing the church, and eventually, holding Bible study and trying to mentor them and guide them and help them the best that I can as a white man. One time one of the young men riding in my car got frustrated with me, and he said, Dana, you will never understand what it's like to be a black man. And unfortunately, I had to look at him and say, I will never know what it means to be a black man. But what I will try to do is to help you be a man that will succeed. And all I have to offer you is what I know and what I can do, and guidance and encouragement to inspire you to become all that God created you to be. And the power I knew was in our tongue, because the word said that we have the power of life and death. And so the main thing that I asked the Most High Yah to do all these years with anybody that I'm in front of is to give me a tongue of the learned, to speak a word of truth and of life and of power and blessings into them. Because I know that what my young men needed more than anything was to be built up, to overcome the lies that this society had told them, that they would be nothing because they are of no value. And so what I started to do was walk the streets on Morse Avenue. I asked God, after graduating from Moody Bible Institute in 1996, which was 2 years almost after I came to Chicago in January of 1994, and I asked him to grant me this apartment, which was on Morse Avenue. Now, Morse Avenue at the time in Rogers Park was heavily gang and drug infested. One of the gangs that I got to know throughout those years was the Farwell Boys. And so he gave what I asked for, this apartment that was above a Baskin Robbins at the time. And so during the summer months when I moved up there, I would get my dog. I had a Rottweiler at the time, and I would begin just to walk around Morse Avenue and pray. I would do nothing but walk and pray because I knew that there was power in prayer. And I did not pray to remove these guys, but I prayed and asking the Lord at the time to please grant me favor in ways to begin to build relationships with them, to invite them to the church, to play basketball or whatever else I could do to be a blessing to these young men. Well, that happened. I got to know the Farwell boys. I got to know some of them so well that if they got ready to do a drug transaction, they would say, "Hey, Pastor, we need you to step over there." And I would step over, and I honored that. Because one time I remember a young man in the Farwell boys that I knew by the name of Q-Tip. And, after they were kind of done, I went over to Q-Tip and I said, Q-Tip, you really need to stop selling these drugs. And it was easy for me to say this because I came from a very close-knit, blessed family, middle class, with a mother and a father who took care of us 4 children very well. So it was easy for me, with my background, to tell this young man to stop selling drugs. And I remember him grabbing me by the shirt and pushing me up against the wall. And he said, "You know what, Pastor, I'm going to show you something. And then you tell me to stop." And he led me to his house, where I walked into this apartment that really had only a sofa, some mattresses. And I saw his little sister sitting in a high chair up at the table crying. And I saw his little brother running around in only a pair of dirty diapers. And then unfortunately I saw who he said was his mother that was strung out on something on the sofa. And he took me over to the refrigerator and he opened up the door. And he said, "Well, Pastor, if you can put food in here for me to take care of my little brother and sister and help pay the rent and the mortgage, then I'll do what you're asking me to do. But until that time, stop telling me or judging me on what I'm doing." It doesn't mean I ever agreed with those guys selling drugs, but my attitude and my heart changed from being more judgmental to being more empathetic and compassionate, and to pray that God would protect them, as I knew he would be able to transform them. And it was my job not to judge these young men, but my job to inspire them and to love on them and to pray for protection for their lives. Well, one day as I was walking around, a well-dressed young black man, or maybe about my same age, approached me, and at that time I was just walking back from the store, and he threw in a conversation and we began to talk, and eventually we stopped in the parking lot not too far from my apartment, and there we stood and talked for almost 5 to 5.5 hours. And this gentleman shared with me that he had a girlfriend. He had 5 young, beautiful children. They were all girls. And that past May, which at this time it was in the fall sometime, I believe, he had mentioned that his only son, Ronnie Jr., while his girlfriend left to get some stuff at the store, he was at home and laid him down to sleep and went to watch some TV. And when she got home, about 30 minutes later, Ronnie Jr. was dead. And later they found out that he died of SIDS. But Ronnie took that as his own fault, that he killed his only son. Well, because of that, and at the age of 5, when his mother abandoned him at the police station up the street from where we lived, he told me he had turned into drugs and turned into other things such as alcohol to try to subside the pain of a life of even abuse while he was transferred from foster home to foster care to foster home to parent to parent. And so I had the opportunity for these next couple of years to have a relationship with Ronnie, which, because of my relationship with him and at times of his involvement in a gang, could not cross gang boundaries to come to the church. And so because of him and Q-Tip and a few others, I started Godly Street Talk in a coffee shop that the owner allowed me to utilize every Tuesday night. And so every Tuesday night, I would invite the guys from the streets that I now had relationships with to come on in for Godly Street Talk, where we would talk about topics that concerned them. And I would hear and listen and learn to how they, as young men, would solve certain problems. And then I asked them if they would allow me to share possibly a solution or a verses of guidance from the Bible. And together we learned. And eventually we never ended a meeting without all of us standing in a circle, holding hands and praying. And it was through those circles that they began to trust me more and more, and then eventually would ask for prayer with upcoming court cases. Unfortunately, Q-Tip did not win one of his court cases and ended up in prison. Well, eventually there was a couple of murders that took place in the Rogers Park community, and the individual that I found out committed those murders was this Ronnie that followed me and that I had that 5.5-hour conversation with. So I went down to Cook County Jail when he was arraigned and was able to talk to him, the first person after being given arraigned with this crime. And it was during that conversation with him that he said, "You know, Dana, please go meet my good friend Michael Sanders, who had nothing to do with this." That is how I got to know Michael Sanders, who you have already heard me talking about several times, who is still locked up, facing life plus 65 years in prison. While going through the trial with Ronnie, I found out that there was 4 to 5 other men just like me that Ronnie had befriended as they were walking home. However, those 5 men he shot or hit over the head and robbed. But yet the Most High Yah protected me. And not only protected me, but I found favor to be able to, at least for those couple of years, develop some type of a friendship and a relationship with Ronnie. But while I was walking those streets, something else happened. Began to feel a tumor, or a stone, I should say, on the bottom of my foot. And so I would take my shoe off and I would shake it and no stone would fall out. Well, what I found out was there wasn't stones in my shoe, but there was a tumor that was developing on the bottom of my foot. Making a long story short, in that next 1.5 years, I went through 7 foot surgeries. They would cut the tumor from the one foot, and before that foot would even heal where I could take the boot off, a tumor developed in this foot. And as soon as I could have surgery on that foot, and I was in the boot, a tumor reappeared in this foot. And it went back and forth until it reached my left foot so bad that I had to do major surgery with wiring and all kinds of other stuff, which put me on crutches for almost 1 year. But yet I continued to go down to Cook County Jail. I still continued to hobble my way around the street to maintain my relationship with the kids and with the young men. Well, I took a journey to Africa. I was due to have my 8th and ninth surgery, because the main tumors that developed in this foot were now again developing in this foot. And the doctor said that these tumors are so big, we'll have to do exactly the same thing we did to your left foot. But then, like I said, I was invited to Africa, and I decided to postpone this surgery until I got back, and I would endure the pain because I wanted to go to Africa. And part of the reason I wanted to go, because I heard that in Africa, God would show up and show out and do incredible miracles. Well, I went there, and our first stop was in Lagos, and then from Lagos, we took a journey to Benin City. And some of you may have become familiar with Benin City through Papa Idahosa, who was a mighty man of the Most High Yah that did some incredible things there in Benin City. And so when we got there, I was a little down and out because at this point the trip was half over. And we were on our last night there in Benin City, which was a huge revival. And we were expecting at least 20,000 Nigerians, an outdoor revival to come. And so I went with the bishop that brought me along to Nigeria. And I shared with him in the car on the way to the revival that I was sad and I was down and I was hoping that God would heal my foot because I didn't want to go through an 8th and 9th surgery. And I remember him saying, "Pastor, let's pray." And we prayed in the car. When we got there, we walked up onto the stage, and there was a pastor that was getting up ready to lead some worship and prayer. And praise. And every time he would get up to do, he would stop and he'd go back. And finally he would say, "My God, I have heard you." And as he said that, I began to feel this burning sensation going up my legs. And he turned straight around and looked at me. And he said, God has heard your cry. Your tumors are gone." That burning became intense, and then it faded away, and so did the tumors. I came back to Chicago, and I have never dealt with a tumor again. And so here are I've been back to Africa 2 more times, and the last place we stopped was in Port Harcourt with Pastor Chris O'Hari, and this here is Pastor Chris O'Hari. And he still is one of my mentors. Hilltop Christian Center is an incredible church that he built in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, on land and amongst people that even in Africa were unwanted. And these individuals here with Chuka was some of the individuals that I got to know during my trips to Nigeria, where I got to hang out with these young men, play soccer, eat, and fellowship. And it has transformed my life. Well, as I shared with you that I was led to Cook County Jail through Ronnie, through Q-Tip, and then Ronnie introducing me to Michael Sanders. Because I continued to visit Michael Sanders every single week when I was allowed to, the superintendent, Collier, which you can see him pictured right here, one day as I was coming in, pulled me to the side and said, "Brother, get into my office. I need to talk to you." Well, naturally, I thought I was in trouble. And when I got into his office, he said, "Young man," he said, "I have not seen somebody as faithful as you coming into this place to encourage my men." He said, "I know you've come in here only to visit Michael Sanders, but every time you leave him, Michael Sanders would share what you guys talked about. And the brothers would be encouraged to hear what Michael Sanders would have to say after you guys visited. He said, I want to make you a volunteer to be able to come in and go when you please." And so I did. He allowed me to come to, I began to come up there on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve instead of going home to my family. And he would allow me to bring in food to a deck of guys on floor 2B where Michael Sanders was. And for Christmas Eve and for Thanksgiving and even for Easter, he would split the cost with me as I would go to where the guys wanted, whether it was Popeyes or Kentucky Fried Chicken or Church's Chicken. And we would bring in food to feed all of these guys on the floor that he now allowed me to go in and speak to them right behind the bars, right in their day room, as many times a week as I wanted to. And through that, I also got to know other men and through the Salvation Army, and together we created the Life Learning Dorm 2B. And in this picture, you will see the first group of inmates, classmates, that graduated with certificates from the Life Learning Dorm. Yes, we taught them the Bible, but we taught them anger management skills. We taught them job skills. We were able to bring computers in. We were able to do counseling with the men. We did tutoring. We did chapel services. And right up here, even though the circle moved, right there is Michael Sanders. Gary. Here, I forget some of their names. I know we have Michael right here. And this gentleman right here, actually, I will show you. This is off the cuff, but I still have this hanging in my office today. Jose drew this and then gave it to me. And when I received it, I put it into a frame, and it is still hanging on my wall. And if you give me just 1 second, I'll show you something else. This is another drawing that was done by my brother. Where are you at? Right here. And then something else that was incredible is that right here you have a brother by the name of Santos. Several years later, I had the opportunity to witness him being released from prison after he served 13 years innocently convicted of murdering a man. And I got to know Santos and his daughter and his son and his wife, Lily, very well. They made their way here from Puerto Rico after their son was born with the cord wrapped around his neck. They weren't able to get the medical help they needed for their son, so they came here to the United States to get the medical help they needed. And within 6 months of being here, Santos was working for a man that took advantage of him and framed him in committing the murder of a man that he committed. But because the judge and Santos's lawyer were working hand in hand with the state's attorney, they found him guilty. But 13 years later, the FBI came in while investigating this judge and saw that Santos was an innocent man, and within days, on Christmas Eve, Santos with Lily and all of us walked with him out as a free man. And it was from there that some lawyers took his case. And years after, he was awarded a small chunk of money, but enough money that he can use to better his family. You know, and I remember this one Christmas Eve when I was getting ready to bring the food down to the guys. I got to my car, and I had a white Kia Sportage at the time. Yeah, I got to my car, and I noticed that somebody did not like me because my car was spray painted with a bright blue color, saying things about me in words that let me know whoever did this was somebody that did not like me or what I was doing. And at that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to go get this taken care of. What am I going to do? But I knew that the men were waiting not just for me, but also for the food. And so I decided that I could see through my windshield that I would still make my way to the jail, because what was done was done. There was nothing I could do at that point, and it was just a car. Nothing of great value to me. Well, in driving, the looks that I got, I know some people must have thought it was my ex-girlfriend taking revenge on me. But I got down there to Cook County Jail, and I carried the food in, and we had a great time together. And I came back out now trying to decide what I was going to do. And as I was walking to my car, a gentleman approached me and said, "Looks like somebody doesn't like you too well." And he was a chaplain that would volunteer someplace else in the prison system there, or Cook County Jail. And he said, "You know, I have a very good friend that is a car mechanic." So he said, "Let me call him and see if he's at the shop. Because if this just happened, I know there's a solution they can use that might be able to take your paint off." And so he called, and the guy happened to be at the place, at his shop, and he said, "Yes, tell him to come immediately." And so I drove over there, and together the three of us put this chemical on a rag. And within an hour or so, there was only little bit of residue that you could see on the inside of my driver's side outdoor mirror. And when he said, "Well, here's some more stuff to get it," I said, "No, leave that paint there. Because every time I see that residue of paint, of blue paint, it will remind me of the faithfulness of the God that I serve." And so I share this part of my journey with you to hopefully encourage you as well, that we serve a faithful God. His name is Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yah. And all of you who are His precious chosen people, you have been such a blessing to me. You have taught me so much. And so thank you for listening with me as I share another video of one of my journeys in this 26-year life that I've been living, serving the Most High Yah and loving His people. Shalom.